just going to read from Psalm 77, which came up in the lectionary. I don't know if any of you follow. There's readings on the lectionary. There's a Church of England site with readings for every day, and we look at that. We don't always follow the exact readings for every service, but the other day Psalm 77 came up, and it's just definitely one of my favourite psalms. And it finishes with this line, if you could, put it up on the screen, Esther, thank you. And it says this: your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters. Interesting phrase next. Though your footprints were not seen. Though your footprints were not seen. Yet he's led us through the mighty waters. Yet his footprints were not seen. And again, you led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. And I was just intrigued by that phrase, though your footprints were not seen. And so hence the picture at the very beginning and the famous poem that Jan alluded to in her prayer. Because sometimes, we ask, maybe God's hand is not evident, it's not this huge, big hand coming down and everything kind of splats and wow, that's God. But he is at work, but he's not always seen, is the point. And I've been looking at, I don't know, I'm sure some of you know it very well, the book of Esther. Anybody know the book of Esther in the Old Testament? Yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful book. It's 10 chapters long, and it's quite a tale, really. And it's sort of presented as, sort of a beauty pageant. And Esther. Does anyone not know the story? It's anyone? Not? Yeah. Okay. So you have to read it. It's only 10 chapters in the Old Testament, and apparently there's 1 or 2 films out on YouTube which you can see. But basically, the people of Israel were in exile. Well, most of them were. Some in Persia, and that was 5th century BC, huge Persian Empire, despotic king, could do what he wanted. And so the people, some of the Jewish people were in Susa, which is in Persia, Iran these days. And they were kind of, basically trapped. So the king, you have to read the story, doesn't like his queen, deposes her, but he wants a queen. So he just grabs all, his minions grab hold of just girls, and he wants to choose between the most beautiful girls. And amongst them is one called Esther, and she's a Jewish girl, and he brings her, and they're in this kind of harem, and they're all prepared, and they're with the king for a night, and then they go to another side, where essentially they're concubines. So it's a tale of imprisonment and entrapment and abuse and all the things that we see often on our news. So it's a pretty grim beginning, but the Lord is at work, and there is grace on this girl called Esther. Sorry, as there is here in the Crowhurst. And she has the king's favor, and she becomes queen, okay? But there's a series of circumstances. One of the king's right-hand man, he's called Haman, and he has a growing hatred for the Jews, and he wants to exterminate them. So there's a plan that he casts lots for, when will this day when we'll actually have a pogrom against the Jewish people? And so that's going to be, and so they cast lots for that, and so this day is fast approaching. But God is at work, and Esther has become queen, and she slowly reveals her identity. She fasts together with her cousin Mordecai, and God is at work, and through a series of circumstances, this plot to exterminate the Jewish people in the Persian Empire is foiled. Okay, that's the general plot. Right, but the point is, in this book, God is not mentioned once. All right, not once. There's no prayer to God. There's no prayer that God is speaking. And so there's a book, the only book in the Old Testament where God is not mentioned. Okay? Is God at work? Was he at work? Yes. Even though we don't see him, or not in the kind of the normal way. Even the Jewish folks have this festival, this Passover, those are the famous ones, but there's now one called Purim, when they celebrate this kind of salvation. And Purim means lots, the lottery. It's kind of, and throughout you see that the cousin Mordecai just happening to sit at the city gate, and he hears a plan to depose the king. And then later the king happens to have a sleepless night, so he looks into the annals of the history and he realizes this Mordecai, Esther's cousin, hasn't been rewarded. And it's just one thing after another, just coincidences, sitting down at a place, a sleepless night. I think Pippa had a sleepless night last night, so I'm sorry about that, Pippa.
That's all right.
But it's just a series of coincidences. And even the festival that's celebrated out of it's called Purim, lots. Is God at work? Was he at work? Well, he was. And even though it wasn't in the kind of exuberating way that we might think, yet he was at work. God is there. And the book of Esther is really God kind of winking. Am I really not there? Open your eyes to see God at work around you and in you. Read it. And so this finishes as well, the footprints that are not seen in any kind of huge way with our visible, physical eyes. So just briefly, the rest of the psalm, if we could just have it up, that climax is in this. It's the psalmist crying out to God in his struggle. I don't know if you've cried out to God recently. I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. And when I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out my untiring hands, and my soul refused to be comforted. This is kind of grim, really, isn't it? But I remembered your God, and I was that helpful? No, I groaned, I mused, and my spirit grew faint. And you kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days. The nostalgic kind of, it's better before, wasn't it? The years of long ago. And I remembered my songs in the night. My heart mused and my spirit inquired. It's kind of really pouring out trouble before God. Where is God? Is he really there? Is he not there? But I just noticed, I think I counted up all the I's and the me's in that first 6 verses. And I counted 18 I's and me's. It's just I, me, I. Just distressed and just looking at himself and all the stress. And sometimes we're like that, aren't we? Just I, me, I. Those are the first 6 verses. I love the way the psalm's just constructed, just to express sometimes. It's good to pour out our souls before the Lord. But sometimes we need to turn to the Lord, and he invites us to do that. But then it kind of gets even a bit more groggy. He just doesn't say, I, me, I'm in trouble. He starts accusing the Lord. Will the Lord reject me forever? Verse 7. Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? These are the basic stuff of God's character, his unfailing love, his promises that he's not going to reject us forever. The Old Testament's full of it, the New Testament's full of it. This is God. And he's kind of really, the freedom to even criticize the apparent neglect of God's own character. That's amazing, isn't it? That's a bold step. But that's what he has been doing here. The fundamental questions. Well, what's God really like? And then there's a kind of verse 10. This is kind of the change, the key. And it says here in this version, then I thought, to this I will appeal, the ears of the right hand of the Most High. Well, that's good, to appeal to the Lord. There's another version, another translation, which says, have I written it down? Yeah, this is my grief or distress, that the Lord has changed. this is my grief. So he thinks the Lord has changed. I think that why the different translations is because in Hebrew they put down just the consonant, 3 consonants without the vowels. So if you've got 3 consonants, you can put different vowels and get different words. So sometimes there's just a bit of a nerdy interlude. If you get FCS in English without the vowels, you just read it. Well, put in A and E, you get faces. If you put O and U, you get focus. Yeah. So that's kind of sometimes what happens. That's why you get different translations. But I love the second one. This is my grief that the Lord has changed. And so he thinks, maybe the Lord has changed. But I like this too. I appeal to the Most High. You choose. But it's kind of, he's at the end of himself, and now he appeals to the Lord. And then there's this lovely verse, there's the change in verse 11 and on. And I will remember not just the nostalgic, oh, that is better before, but now I'll remember the deeds of the Lord. I will remind myself that Lord has been faithful. He has done deeds and wonders. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. And I will meditate on your works. No longer I, me, me. What have you done? And consider all your mighty deeds. Your ways, O God, are holy. Not just his deeds, his ways. His ways are great, aren't they? His ways of love and forgiveness when we've followed him. Something's different even in our own lives. You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples with your mighty arm. You redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. Jacob who said, I will not let you go until you bless me. Joseph who also was flung into, remember, by his brothers into a pit and kidnapped and sold into slavery. And Joseph could say at the end, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Was God absent? No, he was there. And even in the difficulty of life, he was faithful and he turned it around in some way. So verse 16, the waters saw you, O God. So after kind of working this through, there's one big tidal wave, tsunami, big crash of waves. The waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you and writhed. The very depths were convulsed. The clouds poured down water. The skies resounded with thunder. Your arrows flashed back and forth. Your thunder was heard in the whirlwind. Your lightning lit up all the world. The earth trembled and quaked. But even in the midst of this storm, what did the God do? Finish with the verses with which we started. That your path led through the sea. He parted those waters. That's what he's remembering. Though your footprints were not seen. Have you been absent? No, even in my distress, you've been here. In the life of Joseph, you've been there. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. So even though that famous verse in Isaiah, the mighty waters, the waters will not overwhelm you. The fire will not burn you because the Lord is faithful and he is here and he is with us. He's faithful. He's our rock. He will not let you go. And I can't resist to read the famous poem of the footprints. If we could have it up, Esther, that'd be great. I seem to have lost my copy, so I'll read it. Apologies if hopefully you can see the blue in the background. This was me putting it together. Esther would have done a better job. It's 4 verses, and it's so famous, isn't it? Does everyone know it? Most of you probably do. But it just struck me as probably from which, this is the psalm from which it gains its inspiration. One night I dreamt a dream as I was walking along the beach with my Lord. Across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sky, and I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. And he whispered, "My precious child, I love you, and I will never leave you. Never, ever, during your trials and testings, when you saw only, and I will never leave you, never ever, during your trials and testings, when you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. It was then that I carried you." So know that the Lord has carried you, even to this point. And he's with you today, and he's with you. Those folks have spent a lovely few days here and go back to where your homes and various situations, some of which I know are not easy. The Lord is with you. If it's going to be tough, there are footprints in the sand. And sometimes we can't see his footprints, but is he there? Read the book of Esther. Look up into God's eyes, see a little wink. Of course I'm there. And sometimes we just see one set of footprints and think, well, where were you, Lord?
Sorry.
No problem at all. That's the Lord who carries us in those moments.